Welcome to Young Money. I'm Nozipho Mbanjwa. We're coming to you from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange today. We have a special visitor in South Africa. She is the co-founder of One Young World. Her name is Kate Robertson, and she's going to be joining us to talk us through One Young World and the brilliant work that they're doing all over the world. But of course, the story would be incomplete without a real life living example of their work. And so we're very grateful to have Rumwell Mabundza in the show. He is the co-founder of Blume, and he is making waves in the technology and application space, and he's going to be joining us in the second half of the show. Now remember, if you want the Young Money crew to come to you, all you need to do is just follow me on Twitter. It's @TheRealNozy or @CNBC Africa. Don't forget our hashtag, it's YoungMoney410. Let's get chatting to Kate. Kate, it's absolutely lovely having you in South Africa, but maybe let's just take a couple of steps back. What does One Young World do, and where did the original idea and concept come from?
One Young World is the premier forum, world forum for young leaders from every single country in the world. It's the only place in the world where you'll see more countries represented than at the Summer Olympics.
Sure.
So what it's about is young leaders. I think it's opposite, and I'm so glad we're getting to talk to you today when Mo Ibrahim's study has just said that he's not awarding the leadership prize. One Young World is absolutely about looking for leaders. President Pastrana of Colombia, where we're going to this year, he said, Kate, I think you're looking for another Madiba. It's not just Madiba, it's looking for CEOs, founders of businesses who are good people, who are doing the right thing, but we're looking for that all over the world.
And we're going to be talking about the summit in a moment, but talk to us a little bit about how you find these young leaders. What is the methodology that you take when you're looking for them?
So it's the great question, and it's different streams. So about 60% of the delegates, 1,300 delegates every year, will come from business, in particular the corporate sector. So you get the banks, the consultancies, fast-moving packaged goods, Google, Twitter, Facebook, Apple. Everybody sends their brightest and their best. So there is that cohort. Are they elite of business? I don't know, not elite in a pejorative term. Then you have NGOs put forward people. You have young people who are self-starters. We have an enormous application. It's sometimes over 20,000 who apply for put themselves up to come. They then have to be vetted. Then we have people sent by the universities. So it's a mix, but it's the one forum where you will see every single sector, from NGOs to corporates to education to people in government, people trying to get into government, rather than we keep those separate.
Now, with all of these nominations coming through, how do you ensure that you're getting the best of the best that they could be? How do you ensure that you're looking at a pipeline of Madibas and not just a large group of young people?
It's tough. The corporates have their own strict criteria that they apply to One Young World. The most important thing is we're looking for, usually you're asking senior people from all over the world, have you spotted a leader? And the truth of the matter is that most people will say, that young kid Nozi, she's going to be on television.
Great example.
People can see it, you know. So that's one thing. Then the other thing that we're asking the great and the good, and also the ambassadors themselves to help us find, is where is the young star who is bothered about society? So you're looking for social engagement beyond the norm. The fantastic thing, and I believe this because I have to, but I genuinely believe it, in the age group 18 to 30, there are an awful lot of brilliant, talented young people all over the world who are really bothered about the societies they live in, their own communities, and bothered about the global space. They truly are a different people.
Now, this is a sizable meeting of young people from almost every single corner of the world. Talk us through the logistics of what this actually looks like.
The logistics, you don't want to know. When I was trying to get it off the ground, somebody at the British Council said to me, using swear words, which I won't use now, he said, you are completely out of your mind. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. The logistics are hell. It's doable. The big thing is that in addition to these fabulous youngsters themselves, we make sure that we have famous people there to provide them counsel and to be with them, not just to appear on the stage and walk off backstage, but to actually answer a question, talk to you. And that helps us logistically in as much as it draws such a big focus of the world's media that we can get a lot of other stuff done.
Right.
So this year, Kofi Annan, Bob Geldof, Professor Eunice, Mary Robertson, Cher, all coming back
Heavy
again.
hitters of note.
Unilever's Paul Polman, but God bless them, they're the ones like me that I call, those are the old people. And then we have groups of young people coming through. I'm hopeful this year, Shakira and Nauru Quintana. So we're looking for inspiration from all age groups. But those are a really, really important thing. In the logistics, the toughest thing by far is the visa thing. You can imagine. But when we were here in Johannesburg in 2013, the government were really brilliant to us, and we had a visa waiver, and we had enormous support from Homeland and Interiors to help us get people in here. And I think that was the 1 year where we only lost 2 delegates. We lost somebody in Ethiopia and somebody in Nigeria on visa issues, but otherwise we got everybody here.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the countries and how you choose which country you're going to be holding the summit at. But before we do that, I mean, it's a couple of days, on average about 4 days, where young people from all over the world are together. What happens at the One Young World Summit? What do you walk away with?
Well, we say, and it's one of the logistic things that is really tough, we say that this is a forum that is not just of and for these young leaders, it is by them. So they tell us throughout the year what they want to discuss. They tell us how they want the discussions to be framed. The majority of speaking from the main stage is from the delegates themselves. So if you go as a delegate speaker and you get it through the delegate speaker competition and you get onto the main stage, say it's you, you will be introduced by Kofi Annan. And he will come onto the stage with you and he will say, the young woman I'm introducing today is also from Africa, as am I. I have been talking to her, we have some shared experiences. So we ask these famous people to lend their stature to our young leaders, to lift them up. But the range of topics that is discussed is selected by the community throughout the years, over 9,000 young leaders now around the world over the 7 years. So they choose broad subjects. So broad subjects coming through this year, environment, peace and security, and then they frame those, because obviously you've got to narrow those down.
And that was going to take me to my next question, which was, what are young people bothered about? What is keeping them up awake at night? What do they want to talk about at this particular platform?
It's really, really tough stuff. What is interesting about our surveys through the years is it is barometric and it does point you to where their heads are, and it's kind of universal. So 2010, 2015, environment came up very high. But that is because COP15 and COP21 were big deal environmental talks. Environment's still there. Obviously, you guys, your age group, you are reaping the storm, and you know this, I don't need to tell you that. So that's there. When we came to South Africa, I was quite plagued because the big African delegations put corruption at the top of the agenda. I felt that there was a kind of hang up, oh, it's us, it's Africa, oh, corruption. My message on that, as from everybody else involved in the One Young World family, corruption is everywhere. This is not in Africa, it is everywhere. Is it the biggest scourge on earth? Yes, it is. Anything you can fix, you can't fix it if there's corruption. This age group have worked it out. They know that. So that is high in talks. What worries me this year, and it's just a fact, peace and security extremely high, obviously, and particularly cybersecurity, again, obviously. But what I find interesting is the strands are very, very clear. A few years ago, after the recession, right at the top of the agenda was youth unemployment. Obviously still a massive issue, but at the time it was top of the agenda, replaced today by corruption.
And of course, when you do see these big international fora, there'll always be naysayers who will say, well, what happens after the conversation? Where does the conversation land? What is the action associated with the conversation? So what is the tangible outcome of One Young World?
Our thing, and I agree with the naysayers about conferences, and our thing always with our young leaders is we say to them, we beg them, this is not a talking shop. Even Geldof, who will be the first person to criticize anything, even Geldof says this is not a talking shop. We say to them, we love seeing you, but we don't want to see you again necessarily. So don't keep coming back and be a serial conference goer, because those people are no use to anybody. So our biggest thing is that they find each other as a global network of young leaders, and one day they will have world peace. They will deliver that thing. They know each other as young leaders. They go back wherever they came from, and they get on with it, whatever they have to do. So we measure the impact throughout the year as much as they tell us. They don't tell us everything that they're doing. We know that we deliver a return on investment at 12-to-1, social impact. That is our concern. And throughout the world, we have coordinating ambassadors, 23 of them. There are 13 ambassadors inside the corporates. The brilliant thing, because they're social media people, their network lives after the summit. It's very vibrant, but it's not just that chat. It's also, can you help me? Can you put this up for me? Can you do this for me? And it just is. One of the South African ambassadors was saying to me last night, Malibongwe Saba, who's got a fantastic following, including Advocate Madonsela, who said that to him last night. She said, I'm following you. This is just an amazing young man who comes from a disadvantaged background, who's saying is just because I'm from a disadvantaged background doesn't make me disadvantaged. And seeing somebody like that who said to me, I've started to travel because I've got friends everywhere in the world now, is a special young guy. So
let's go back to the host country selection and how that takes place. What's the rationale and the thinking behind that?
The host cities bid. And what we're looking for from the host cities is open your arms, open your heart. We don't need money, but we do need you to put up the opening and closing ceremonies and put it on for us. Make it as good as you can. Show your country off. Beyond that, we are looking in the bids. Where's the heart? Is this a city who really gets young people, really cares? We had that in Johannesburg in 2013. There was a lot of Vuma, a lot especially from the South African ambassadors. With Colombia, it's been very interesting. They bid for this nearly 2 years ago. They knew that their peace process was coming into play, and they want to show that their war has basically ended. And that for us was a big call. To be able to go to places where the peace and reconciliation movement started by Tutu and Co. is showing its hand and showing there is a tomorrow, there is a way through. This doesn't have to be your story. There is another story. So Colombia this year for us, massively exciting.
Kate, final question. If you could put in 3 words that would describe the heart, the essence and the culture of One Young World, what would that be?
Positive change, courage, and more than hope, belief. Believe it can change.
Positive change, courage, and believing that the world can change. Those are the words from Kate Robertson. She is co-founder of One Young World, joining us at the Johannesburg Stock Exchange. When we come back, we speak to Rumwell Mabundza, co-founder of Blume, but also an ambassador of One Young World, and he's going to be giving us his side of the experience of One Young World, and of course talking to us about his amazing entrepreneurial venture. We'll see you in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Young Money. If you've just joined us, we're coming to you from the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and we've just spoken to Kate Robertson. She is a co-founder of One Young World, but now we get to meet Rumwell Mabundza. He's the co-founder of Blume. He is, of course, also an ambassador of One Young World. Now, Rumwell, thanks for making the time to join us. Before we talk about Blume and the amazing things that you're doing in the entrepreneurial space, how would you describe your experience of One Young World?
Yeah, I think my first experience of One Young World was in 2013. It was in Johannesburg, and after that I was invited to go to Dublin. That was my first international trip, so it was exciting. And after that I went to Bangkok. So it's been a great conference. It gave me the foundation that I needed. It was thought-provoking, and it really drove positive change out of my thinking and how I wanted to go about things in my own country. So it was a great conference. And
did attending the various summits influence the entrepreneurial venture that you're now co-founder of, Blume?
It was one of the most pivotal things. I think the the counselors that are there, your Richard Bransons, Kofi Annan, Bob Geldofs, those voices, they drive that burning flame inside of an individual, and it did so for me, and really pushed me on to want to leave corporate. I had a great career and left it all behind to start off a venture that I believe in, and I live heart and soul.
Courageous decisions for sure, but let's talk a little bit about the application that you've developed and the societal change that you're hoping that it's going to bring through. Sure. Talk us through the mechanisms and how those work.
So when I came back from Bangkok, the summit, I came back to South Africa, and every day I went to work, I realized that there was more and more informal workers selling their skills on sides of roads, hardware stores, and that really saddened me every day. And I thought, what can I do to change this and give these guys opportunities and give them an entrepreneurial platform to also thrive? The same way I was backed, I thought I could do something for them. So I left my job and I set out on this venture to leverage a brand new technology in the space that will enable these service professionals in the home services space to get opportunities. Because the biggest thing, and when I asked my colleagues and said, why don't you use these guys? I said, we don't trust them, we don't know if they're competent, we don't know if they'll do what they say they'll do. And so I then made it my mission to develop a technology that gives the consumer information and yet enables those service professionals to have simple job management tools that enable them to get more business and to actually provide for their families.
Sure. So if I was an informal trader, if you will, in South Africa, and I just come across this app, what does it enable me to do, and how does it fundamentally change my life?
So it's got three components to it. There's a marketing tool that enables them to actually showcase their work. So they can take pictures of their previous work and showcase them to consumers. And the second part is that there's job management tools in there, invoicing, quoting, payments, all done within one mobile application. And the last part is a mini CRM that's built for them to be able to have a client list that they can continually proactively manage so that they can get repeat business on the back of that. So the application's an all-encompassing application that will enable these guys to really do well in South Africa. And my vision is to connect the unconnected and to create prosperous communities on the back of that. And
of course, to move towards that vision of connecting the unconnected, you have to address issues of affordability and access. And one would assume that with smartphones in their hands, with high penetration across the African continent, you almost cleared one of those really big hurdles. Spot on.
I think you can see that this new generation is accessing everything through technologies. And so these guys have to also keep up and go that one step further to ensure that they leverage technology to get more business. Back in the day, you'd use your local newspapers, your phone books, and you'd advertise in there, but it doesn't work anymore. People are looking for efficiencies, they're looking for reliability, and technology is just that.
I want to take a couple of steps back to that moment when you decided that you're going to make this courageous decision and quit a corporate job, which is, for a large extent, a lot of young people look to get into the corporate space and decide to take the entrepreneurial venture. The reaction from family, that's always what I want to know first.
I have a mother who has always backed me. I started my first business when I was 10. And so she really believes that I can do it, and she really does buy into my vision. And the good thing is that when I actually left my corporate job, I spoke to two colleagues that I worked with for various amounts of time. My one colleague was actually my boss, and spoke to him, and I said, listen, this is what I'm going to start. And he resigned with me, and my other colleague resigned with me, and we're co-founders of this business. So we all believe in this purpose.
So they really bought into the vision as well, and that's really fantastic. Now, it's been a number of years since your first business, which when you were 10. If there have been any big lessons for you that you've picked up along the journey, what would these be? For an entrepreneur who's watching this show right now, what are the 2 or 3 big things that you've learned that you could impart to them so that they don't repeat the same if there were mistakes, or they accelerate if it is an opportunity?
I think the fundamentals of entrepreneurship is that you must back yourself, because if you back yourself, others will back you, and you must believe in your vision. You must have a vision that makes you wake up every single day in the morning knowing that whatever hurdles in front of you, you'll overcome. my vision is to connect the unconnected, is to empower people that aren't empowered, and our fellow brothers in Africa and all the way through here into South Africa. So my biggest thing even now, hearing about xenophobia in South Africa, is that this application and this business is the core fundamental that is to empower Africa, and I hope that it unites us and not divide us, and that's why our technology is being developed in a way that enhances and enables human interaction, and it's not one that actually wants to drive people apart. And so that's my vision.
Sure, and that's a big conversation right now, looking at inclusivity, especially at a time in the world where we're seeing a lot of nations wanting to build borders and go back to nationalism, and no doubt a key talking point that will come up at the upcoming summit. But I want to go back to the kind of support you've received on your journey. Let's start off with the funding and access to capital. Did you require any funding to start your journey? And if you did, how did you manage to get that in?
Yeah, so we required about 10 million rand to get this business going. We got our first 2.5 million when we initially started in March last year. And that enabled us to resign and focus on this full time, as well as build the technology. Now we're actually raising tranche 2 of the capital that we require. It's about 7 million rand, and we're actually meeting a couple of venture capitalist firms in South Africa and seed capital investors. So the vision is there, the work is still going on, and the application is now ready to launch in June. And we are already beginning to sign up service professionals, and we're vetting the service professionals, and we're making sure that consumers get reliable guys that they can trust to welcome into their homes.
Well, we're certainly going to be chatting to you after June to get a sense of the uptake in the market. But I want to go back to the finance conversation, because we know that the appetite for venture capital funding in South Africa to a large extent is thin. It's not always clear whether there isn't enough funding or whether there aren't enough ideas to match the funding. How do you make sense of that particular space, and how do you think we can improve entrepreneurs with the ideas finding venture capitalists and angel investors to take them forward?
Yeah, I think the biggest part is that you have to take your concept from idea to some sort of tangibility. And an entrepreneur needs to figure out how to use limited resources to get to a place where you can actually show something to an investor, something that's tangible, so that they can believe in your vision. And so our biggest starting point was to develop a prototype so that at least people can see the vision and be able to relate to the vision in order to invest. And I think too many people go to investors with just an idea, and an idea means 100% risk, and in investors' eyes, they're trying to figure out, well, what will it take to take that idea into execution? Because execution is the biggest thing when it comes to business. And I think many entrepreneurs have great ideas, but they fail when it comes to execution.
So you need to find a way of de-risking the idea and maybe going with the prototype so that the investor at least has a sense of what's possible. So we've spoken about finance. Let's talk about the policy environment and whether there could be better support coming from the government side. Listening to your idea, it certainly sounds like this is something that the Ministry for Small Business in South Africa, as an example, could really run with and support. What is your experience of engaging with the public sector, if you have at all?
I have, and I think the red tape behind it has been quite difficult. To meet the right person is difficult in the public sector space, and so the private sector is more engaging when it comes to being able to set up the meetings. And I think government needs to set up more structures and less red tape and less loopholes that an entrepreneur needs to go through in order to engage the right people and be able to showcase your idea and get support. And I think too many people think it's just finance, but intellectual capital is also vital when it comes to building a business, and it's all about relationships, because that's what actually enables a business to succeed in a country like ours.
Now, the countdown to June, I'm sure, is top of mind for you and the team that you're working with. Has there been a mistake that could have crippled this vision? And if there have been mistakes, and as you say, plenty, how did you come back from them?
So the journey of entrepreneurship is one that you have to be agile. You go through many challenges daily, and I think when we started with the idea of wanting to solve the solution, we thought we could just get into a room, put together technology that's going to solve the problem, but without actually living the problem and actually engaging with the service professionals and setting up those focus groups, we actually developed the wrong technology.
Sure.
We went through a process of about 5 months where we thought that our technology was ready to go, and we actually did usability testing. We spoke to the service professionals and we realized that actually it was the wrong technology that we developed. So we took a step back and we started to spend a lot of time with these service professionals. We understood their businesses, we understood their requirements, we understood their barriers, and only then, when we understood the problem intimately, could we build the right solution that best fits the problem. And only then were we able to move forward.
So if you were to package this as a case study for business school, what's the biggest lesson that's come out of it?
You have to develop a real life problem. If you're not solving a real life problem, it won't work. That's what business is all about. If you can find that problem, spend a lot of time understanding the problem, and then you'll find the solution.
Final question, Rumwell, after June and maybe another 2 or 3 years later when we do reconnect, tell me about the numbers that you think you'll be sharing with me in terms of your penetration into the market, the number of service providers that and service clients that you've been able to get onto the platform. What are the targets?
So our target is to onboard 30,000 service professionals in a 3-year period. And we also want to be in 4 million households in South Africa that will enable this access. And so so I think the biggest thing and how we actually monetize our application is through localized brands that will be able to target the service professional and the consumer base. And so at the moment, for the first 12 months, it's all about building up the marketplace, creating as much awareness as possible, because at the end of the day, I think the biggest fundamentals around this application is that it's a neighborhood application enabling consumers to recommend their trusted service professionals and recommend services that they want in their homes. And so that's where we're going with this.
Wishing you all the best as you count down to June. There you have it. His name is Rumwell Mabundza. He is the co-founder of Blume, and his vision is to connect the unconnected. It's been a fantastic show. Thank you so much for making the time to join us. Remember that if you want us to come to you, just follow me on Twitter. It's @TheRealNozi or @Young or @CNBC rather. Don't forget that our hashtag is YoungMoney410. We're always bringing you the latest and freshest ideas from young entrepreneurs from all over the continent, and so we will want to talk to you as well. Until next time, let's keep it real, let's keep it rich.